Total War is dead. This is not up for debate. This is an objective fact. It died in 2023. Why did Total War die? Hello, this is Emperor Dion, TSR Emperor Dion, and Emperor of the 409th. So, we've had 3 big YouTubers talk about this subject already. They talked about how Total War was dying. But I'm not here to tell you that Total War is dying like they did. I'm here to tell you Total War is dead. Total War is a corpse. Like a corpse that continues to twitch after death. That is Total War right now. Total War is a dead body that's twitching after death. That's what it currently is. And these big YouTubers who spoke on this too, I'm going to mention that they brought up the macro level of what's going on, but I feel like they really did not go hard enough on this topic. It was Pixelated Apollo, Legend of Total War, and Volon. 3 guys that I more or less respect. I don't generally respect big YouTubers, especially when it comes to this game. Even with these guys, like I think Volon's pretty good as a player, but like Pixelated Apollo and Legend, they're a little bit more dubious. But that's not the point. Point is, I do respect what they have to say. They looked at it from a macro level. But today, you're going to get it from a micro level. My opinion, a small guy, someone who's not really influenced by any kind of brownie points with an audience. I don't really have an audience. I can speak my mind from the heart. I'm doing this on my own free time. So my response to this is going to be a lot more genuine. And I think it's worth considering. So, Total War is dead. That is my initial premise. Total War is dead for one very simple reason. Well, there's multiple reasons. We're going to go through them, each of them. So, but the first main reason is what Creative Assembly decided to do with their old games. Sometime in 2023, they got the bright idea, they got the wild hair in their ass to, for whatever reason, go through all of their old games. So like, I think every game prior to Rome 2, and including Rome 2 itself, I think maybe Attila 2, they went through and they did a quote-unquote quality of life update. And the only thing they really did, well, they did 2 things, actually, I noticed. Because in Napoleon Total War, for instance, they changed the musket sounds, which if you had those musket mods that we all used to use, you can't really use those now unless you have a workaround for it. I do have a friend that has a workaround for that, but it's a bit of a thing to do. But they changed the musket sounds, okay? They changed the vanilla musket sounds, which I don't know why the fuck they did that. This is an old ass game. Like, why do you care about the musket sounds? Why do you not just let us have our musket sound mods, like most of us have been doing for years and years now? But okay, they did that in Napoleon. I don't know if they did something like that in the other games. But the most striking thing they did was they removed the chat. Holy moly. I need to tell you exactly why this is a catastrophic thing. This is so catastrophic to the old games especially that I can effectively say Total War died. As soon as they decided to do that, Total War died. Okay? Much of the Total War community actually formed off of those chats. People met each other. People got to know each other. People had a little bit of a banter, even with complete strangers, off of those chats. That's no longer possible. The core of how all of us came together to make a Total War community in the first place, the core of that's now gone. The only way that can be facilitated now is if you go to Creative Assembly's official Reddits, their official Discord servers, or you make your own Discord server and invite a bunch of people in that play these games. But see, that's a lot more disconnected from the game itself. The in-game chats are vital, because there are lots of people you don't know. There's lots of people you haven't met yet. Even as an old-time player, there's lots of people that you can still run into that you've never met. Okay? So, taking away that in-game chat immediately removes a major part of the core But what started the Total War community in the first place was the in-game chat. The removal of the in-game chat has done two catastrophic things to the Total War games. The first one is that the dissemination of information and knowledge cannot be done as easily now. So there's a lot of players who do not play the game very well, do not know certain things, do not know how to improve, aren't doing the correct things. And these players are the ones who suffer the most, I'd say, because now there's no information, there's no dissemination of information in game. Again, like I said previously, you don't have every single person on your friend list that plays these games. You don't know everybody that plays these games. A lot of people you play on these games are people you might be seeing for the very first time. If not, they're just, it's that kind of deal, you know. You can't have everybody on your friend list. But this dissemination of information could be done in game when you first meet these people. So it was a lot more convenient with the in-game chats to tell them certain things in game. To also communicate with your team in game too, because that could be true for your team too. You aren't going to be playing with your friends all the time. So there's no ability to disseminate information in game, which is vital. Okay, and another knock-on effect of this too is that you can no longer tell when people drop out of the game because this information was displayed in the in-game chat. You can no longer tell when someone's left the game because, again, that was something else also displayed in the chat. You can no longer tell, I mean, unless the game just outright crashes or you get the drop message from the game itself. Unless that happens, you don't know. You could suddenly go from playing against a human player 1 second and then playing against a bot the next second and you wouldn't know. This is a terrible loss. This is a terrible thing, okay? And by extension to this, another knock-on effect of the removal of the in-game chat is that the noobs, the randoms, the people that are just not that good, these people have gotten a lot worse, okay? People kind of got a good sense that certain tactics are favorable. Like, for instance, artillery usage. Most people who use artillery in Empire / Napoleon Total War, most people do not take these guys seriously. Most people are aware if you're a serious player, you don't use artillery. Artillery usage has skyrocketed since the removal of the in-game chat because now you can no longer tell these assholes, unless you're going to go through the trouble of adding them on Steam, nobody can tell these assholes that, hey, you suck. Stop using artillery, you freaking noob. Nobody can do that with them. And I know that's probably mean and you probably shouldn't speak to people like that, but that was a thing that kept noobs in check, okay? It kept them getting better than they otherwise might be. You didn't see too many noobs trying artillery back when there was an in-game chat. I'm just saying, you did have your special head cases, but they very quickly would either find out or they would just not be successful playing the game and they would just, I don't know. Thing is, there was this direct dissemination of information happening because of the in-game chat, and because of this, the noobs and the randoms and the bad players are a lot worse off for it. This has also had an additional knock-on effect on the good players. So, because the bad players are now worse, the experience of the good players now is also worse too. Because now we're having to put up with this. We're having to put up with people bringing artillery. We have to put up with people just being bad in general and not being able to say anything to them. That makes us suffer because good players don't just play each other all the time. Good players do play against randoms. We do play against noobs, and we do play against people who are just not that good. Oftentimes, that's at least half of our games. So, if half of our games are now worse, you know, that just, it more insulates the elite community from bringing in new people, because there's no more direct dissemination of information unless you're going to go through the trouble of adding these people, which of course you're not going to do that. And, you know, noobs may not have the wherewithal to want to add you either. They may not care as much, or they may not even know how to. Okay, they may not even be aware that there is an elite community now, especially outside of seeing, holy crap, there's this player with like all these stars or like a clan tag or something. My point is, everybody's worse off for it. But there's other reasons why the game is now dead. Not only have their old games been crippled by Creative Assembly's recent decisions regarding them, to remove the in-game chat and to do other little weird things that I maybe don't know about yet. But I mean, Creative Assembly themselves, they're at the source of all these troubles too, as to why Total War's now dead. You might argue that the new Total Wars are still popping, and yeah, I've run into lots of people who play Warhammer, who play Pharaoh now suddenly. Like, people are coming on to the new Total War games a bit. They're not the same people that play the old games, though. Definitely not. At least most of them are. I don't really know, for instance, any of my friends who play the new Total War games. So, I mean, Creative Assembly doesn't make good games. There's no getting around that. That's another big reason why Total War's now dead. They're not going to make good games going forward. They're not going to make good games ever, it seems. They don't seem to have the ability to make games like their old games anymore. They either don't have the ability or they don't want to. It's one or the other, or it may be both. But either way, because they no longer make good games, they're not going to attract the same types of people to these games. They're not going to attract high quality people. Because I used to meet a lot of good people in Total War, funny enough, you know, like way back in the day when like Shogun 2 was the newest game. Total War community was thriving. It was full of people that were just interesting to talk to, interesting to play with, and just interesting to hang out with in the Total War community. You don't see people like this anymore, okay? Everybody's, I mean, I'm not going to say everybody's bad, but because Creative Assembly doesn't make good games anymore, you just don't get the same caliber of people around. So, I mean, not only is the community more shit for it, but the games themselves aren't interesting enough to keep your attention. If you grew up on the old games like I did, and so that's always going to be a non-starter for the type of community that I want to be in. The type of community that all the old players want to be in. That's no longer possible because they don't make good games anymore. And we definitely don't want to play fucking Warhammer. And all the other historical games that they came out with, like 3K, that are supposed to be historically based, Pharaoh, Troy, Thrones of Britannia, like all these games are just Warhammer. They're just Warhammer. They got the exact same mechanics as Warhammer. Like 3 Kingdoms straight up wants to behave like Warhammer. Like, your generals are super overpowered. Your troops don't matter. There's no emphasis on the regular men. Like, this is one of the things that made Total War interesting, was that there was much more of a focus on the regular men part of these armies and not really so much of the generals. And Volon said something like this in one of his videos. He was absolutely on the money about this. But the point is, the second reason why Total War is now dead is because Creative Assembly's never going to make another good game. So, what are you really going to do with this? Well, there's no other thing to do than to conclude that Total War is dead. And it is dead. I can give you conclusive proof that it is dead. Not many people talk about Total War anymore. On YouTube, the content creators that didn't sell out to Creative Assembly, at least, they go through and they play mods and stuff like that. They edit their videos really well. They talk to older fans typically, but there's only so far you can go with this, with the modding community. And because there's no in-game chat too, I mean, unless you're gonna get everybody to revert back to an older version of the game, which that's really hard to do because the official version of the game no longer has an in-game chat. So it's hard to bring new people into something like that. And discussion around Total War has become very, very toxic between like newer fans of it and delusional old fans that cling on to whatever crap that Creative Assembly puts out and whatever decisions they make. There's a lot of toxicity around it where there is a discussion, so people kind of avoid talking about it for trauma-related reasons, just flat out because there's no good games or it's just not interesting anymore. You can't really find active Steam pages of Total War anymore. Like that's already been gone before they did this, but more so especially now because again the in-game chat's no longer a thing. So you got to go all the way to Discord to find groups. Okay, you go on Discord, and then it's not really the same though, because like I said, the randoms are worse, the noobs are worse. People bringing artillery and Napoleon Total War. You can't enforce rules like a lot of the elite community, a lot of the community in general operated off of a rules-based system where you state what you want to allow people to bring in the game and people will follow that, and that was like an honor-based system thing that was part of the community. That's no longer enforceable the way it used to because no in-game chat, so rules aren't being followed. The only way you can set rules kinda is to make the title of the game the rules. But even then, like that's assuming that people are gonna read them, which oftentimes people don't. So there's that. That also degrades the quality of the experience for the good players, and there's this negative feedback loop that has been set in motion. This dangerous negative feedback loop that's just going to inevitably lead to the end of it, really. I mean, until they shut down the server, I guess. Like I think there's always going to be people playing Total War, but I'm saying this negative feedback loop has been started to where less and less people are going to see the game as worthwhile of coming back to. Okay, I mean, I can't even look at my old games and replays anymore to just kind of reminisce about old past games because their updates broke my damn replay files. So even from that angle, you know, I was gonna upload some videos off of my replay files, but so many of them have been corrupted from their updates. And I mean, there's all these little micro reasons as to why, particularly concerning the old games. The old games were the last pillar really holding the old community up. But when you go and you strip out the freaking chats for quote-unquote quality of life issues, and by the way, the games don't run any smoother today either. I would say they actually crash more these days than they used to. I used to play like Napoleon Total War, for instance. Napoleon Total War would rarely crash. Like it did happen, but it would rarely crash. Nowadays, you can bet your ass this game's gonna crash probably every other time you turn it on, depending on how long you play it. And if you play it too long, if you play it for a couple hours or two, or like I guarantee you, you're probably gonna experience a crash in that time frame. So it's not like they optimized it to where crashes happen less. No, I would say it actually happens more where the game crashes. So they didn't even do a good job optimizing it, as they said. And I refuse to believe they couldn't have done it to where they didn't take out the freaking chat, essentially. So, I mean, personally, I feel like they're trying to get people to stop playing the old games anyway. They're trying to get them onto the new games, and they still haven't connected, or they don't give a shit that their new games are just not good. That's why there's like this whole population of people who won't go to their new games. So, yeah, and I don't think they're ever going to figure this out. They don't seem interested in figuring it out. A lot of their actions as a company indicate that they're one of these companies that are never going to pay attention to their fans. They're going to have their head in the sand right into the freaking sunset, right into the dying breath of the series. So, Total War is dead. The corpse is still twitching, however, but it is dead. And that's my synopsis of why. So anyways, this has been Emperor Dion. Tell me what you think down in the comment section down below. I will see you guys later. till my next upload, and peace.